On today's show with star columnists Sam Mellinger and Vahe Gregorian, we talk Royals. All the essential topics are covered here. Manager Ned Yost's future, Bubba Starling, when's he going to get called up, Salvador Perez, basically the future of the Royals, because there's not much to say about the present tense Royals. Later, we discuss the World Cup and the party at the Power and Light District, what that means for Kansas City's bid for the 2026 World Cup. This is SportsBeat KC, and I'm your host, Blair Kerkhoff. Sam Mellinger is here, so is Vahe Gregorian, and you guys both wrote about the Royals this weekend, which is becoming increasingly difficult to do. I also wrote about the Royals. You guys wrote about the Royals' future, and I wrote about the Royals' past, which suggests to me there's not much to say about the present tense Royals. So let's spin it forward. And Sam, I was particularly intrigued with your column about what are the objectives for the Royals the rest of the way, and you listed them. You had a handful of what do we look for, what needs to happen, and it kind of starts with the budding stars, does it not?
Yeah, I mean this is such a weird season because they are on a bullet train toward 100 losses, but the most important stuff they're getting right. You know, it's a weird deal. And that includes, the headliner there is Mondesi, and this season was going to be a failure if everything went right except Mondesi took a step back. If it didn't look like Mondesi was going to be a star, then pretty much nothing else would have mattered. And then you get Hunter Dozier to take a big step. Whit Merrifield has continued, this all-star sort of baseline of performance. But, there's some more stuff. And I always think of this, the Royals have trained me to think of this in terms of you can have a losing season or a lost season. And they had a lot of lost seasons between 2000 and 2008, 9 or so. But, you can have a losing season without it being a lost season. And that's the challenge now. And that includes, even like tiny, this might not sound like a big deal, but getting, Cam Gallagher some more starts to see what you have in him as the backup when Sal Perez gets back next year, presumably, as the primary catcher. It includes, seeing, they're intrigued by Glenn Sparkman. They think Glenn Sparkman's been a lot better than his numbers, finding what role that's going to be. Jacob Junis and Jorge Lopez need to pitch their way into the future plans, but here's their opportunity. Bubba Starling will get a chance at some point. We can get into that. There's a fan outcry, and I get it. There's a lot of boredom around the Royals, and Bubba Starling would give us something to talk about. Well, I totally understand why they're not in a rush to bring up a guy who, over the first 72 games of his AAA season, having the first professional success in an 8-year career. And when you struggle for that long, you build up a lot of, sort of scar tissue. And there's a lot of doubts both in yourself and the people around you, coaches, teammates, and all that. And he's got to work through that. And that's part of what's happening too. The minor leaguers, Brady Singer's getting his sea legs a little bit in AA, had a rough start after the promotion. But other guys like Chris Bubik, Daniel Lynch, getting those guys, a little bit closer to the big leagues. That's the important stuff the rest of the way.
I do think it's a hard sell to Royals fans when you say they're getting the important things right. But I think that's a true statement, that they are getting the important things right. We're at the All-Star break, and they're 30-61.
Yeah.
The most important thing to get right is to win baseball games, and they are not close to being a team that can, on a semi-regular basis, win baseball games.
No, I mean, their public, sort of mainstream broad fan marketing is in the dirt. Yeah, I mean, you can't sell that. They only recently, like 2 weeks ago, they had more wins than they were games out of first place. Like for the first time, like all season. I mean, it is a terrible, there's a lot of things wrong with that big league team. And I would never try to sell this as, sort of, God, they're just knocking on the door or whatever. I mean, we're still talking the most ambitious timeline would be 2020. I'm sorry, 2021.
Yeah, I was going to say.
To 2020 would be a hell of an ambitious timeline. 21 to be able to compete, but that's where they are, and there were a lot of bad decisions, some bad luck, but a lot of bad decisions, and then just some inherent Kansas City market challenges that come along with being in the third smallest market in baseball. There's a lot that went into it, and when you get to that point, there's a lot that it takes to get out.
Speaking of the future, Vahe, you caught up with Salvador Perez and wrote about that. I don't think he had spoken publicly, or at least not much, until you got to talk to him last week.
I think maybe they did one news conference right away when he got hurt, something right in that time. And I just got thinking, we'd see him around periodically, and I got thinking, here he is. I have no idea how he's doing. And in a certain way, it's still only a vague concept of moving forward. But he's hit all the checkpoints he's supposed to hit. The thing I found interesting is even their most optimistic assessment is still 10 to 16 months. I don't recall hearing that
from
at the start. From the time of the surgery. So,
which was was it March?
It was March 6th, I think, was the surgery. So it's a bit optimistic to think he's even playing on opening day. A bit. And really, if it just runs to the end of the range that they consider the feasible range, I mean, it's not till mid-season, which is a little different than I expected. But, I don't mean to emphasize that point exactly. I do think he's doing well, and I don't think these guys were inflating his work ethic. I mean, you always wonder about how this stuff works behind the scenes, and especially with a guy who's, sort of so publicly available and performing, and you just don't know what it's like when there's no cameras there. And I got the feeling that he's really going at it pretty hard. So that's all you can ask at this point. And he's going to throw, it looks like, July 24th.
Yeah, that was the note in your story that I was most intrigued by. Throwing on July 24th when he's, still perhaps at that point, 7, 8, 9 months away. I imagine that's going to be a pretty big moment for him, the throwing program that he's on.
I would think, and if we're alert, we can be there to see the throw. I mean, they might let us do that, but more likely they're going to let their video people do that, and we'll see if we can barge our way into it, because I think it'd be a meaningful moment for him and our fan, the fans of the Royals.
I don't know the first thing about rehabs, obviously, but that does seem like a long runway from first throwing to being able to play in a baseball game.
It does. I mean, it seems like a really long runway to that, and so it's hard to know what a throwing program looks like. Maybe we should expand on that when we get closer to it. But I mean, is it 8 throws back, one day, and that's okay. That's it. Let's get that thing in ice.
10 feet or whatever.
Yeah.
Do we know if it's different than a pitcher's throw? Obviously, the motion's different, but it's the same type of injury, right?
It is the same type of injury, commonly referred to as the Tommy John surgery. The thing that I hadn't realized is that this does happen with players other than pitchers, not as often. A thing also one of the trainers conveyed to me that I just hadn't thought about very much. Think about how many times a catcher throws a ball every game. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is, 30 warm-up pitches before the game, however many pitches he's throwing back, right? Some of them are hit, but he's throwing back a lot of pitches. We think it's a big deal when a guy's throwing 100 pitches. Now, he's not putting all that mustard on every one of those, but he probably throws the ball 150 to 200 times a day.
Right, throwing motion every day.
Yeah.
140 games.
Yeah.
Yeah, for him. Yeah.
It's not 35 starts.
And then another 30 in Venezuela, wherever he's playing winter ball with him.
Where he's banned from playing catcher, but always plays catcher.
Yeah. What if he hadn't gotten hurt? Would he have made a difference? What kind of difference might he have made this season?
My thought is they wouldn't be 30 and 61, right? And how much it reorders everything, I don't know, right? But it affects the lineup a little bit, who's where. Maldonado's hit a little bit now in the last couple of weeks, but for 3 months he was an automatic out, basically. So to me, maybe it shifts some things around early. I always joke about the parallel universe concept. I mean, that there is one somewhere, and what would it look like? We don't know, but I think they'd be 7, 8, 9 games better than they are right now. Maybe that's overinflated, but I think they'd be competitive more often and pull through a little more often.
You wonder how the pitching staff might have, how he might have impacted Keller or Junis or some of the young arms.
You know what's interesting is this is an unpopular opinion in Kansas City, but I think Martin Maldonado is a better defensive player than Sal Perez. I think
he won a Gold Glove.
Yeah,
right?
the only non-Sal Perez person to win an AL Gold Glove in the last 4 or 5 years or whatever. I just think like Perez is better. I think he's got a better arm, but I think everything else, framing, game planning, little subtleties like that, pitch framing for sure. Maldonado's better, but I do think that Sal makes a difference. The bat is a huge difference, and Sal Perez is not, a tremendous hitter, but you get 25 home runs and a 450, 480, whatever it's going to be slug percentage out of the catching position. That's a pretty good thing. A hell of a lot better than what Maldonado's doing. And I also believe that as and this is not me just guessing, people tell me, who would know that Maldonado is much better, sort of in the meeting room of, coming up with game plans and all that stuff. But I still think that there's something about the way that Sal carries himself that might be able to prevent, just a train wreck season. That there's an energy, and that got tested last year. And there was a moment where Ned Yost was publicly, outwardly talking about, man, this, he didn't say it like this, but this season is killing Sal Perez, it sort of diminished, his salviness. But then it came back. And, he fought through that. And I think there's some value in that. And this team is missing a lot. But one of the things that it's missing is him, his heart, his soul, his energy.
If nothing else, their 1 through 5 has been pretty darn good, right, in the lineup. 1 through 6 would be really good if Sal Perez was part of this lineup.
You'd be subbing out, just to emphasize one of Vahe's points, you'd be subbing out one of those just automatic outs with a guy that can hit, with a guy that's won a Silver Slugger, right? I'm not wrong.
I believe that's right.
I believe he won a Silver Slugger as a catcher, and you're right, Vahe. He has been a little bit better. They made some tweaks, I think, in the way that where he holds his bat, where he places his hands and stuff. But still, there was a time where that was just a 1-3 ground out waiting to happen.
Yep.
Hey, Blair, do you mind if I just go back to Bubba a little bit? Just want to elaborate or actually ask you guys what you think about what the full rationale is on whether to make the move now. Sam, you already spoke to it a little bit, but to what degree, I think you used the term in your column, that they want him to overperform for an extra length of time, all that, if that's not redundant, in the minor leagues before you make the call. What's the risk of bringing him up too soon? And haven't we seen guys do okay after getting sent back down? Is it that fragile that each guy is his own thing, and Bubba's had his own questions that way?
Well, there's a couple things, and some of this I've been looking up because I'm writing about this in the minutes tomorrow. But when you stall for this long in the minor leagues, there's some problems beyond sort of plate approach. There's some holes that kind of athleticism, not just good athleticism for baseball players, but that kind of elite, ridiculous athleticism should be able to cover, and it hasn't yet. So I don't know exactly what that is, but I know that it exists. And I don't know if that's focus. I don't know if that's studying the other pitcher. I don't know if that's teammate stuff. I don't know, but something exists to hold him back like that. The other part of it is, I would present it like this. I don't think the Royals are being slow on him. There was a time, this is the middle of July, there was a time 2 months ago where everybody was like, what the hell are they waiting for with Chris Owings? And they cut him before Memorial Day. That's really quick. That is really quick. So Bubba Starling has 72 games this season that say he is an exceptional AAA baseball player. He has 665 minor league games before that say he was struggling to hold on and probably wouldn't have without the draft pedigree. I looked this up, and I won't even try because I would butcher it. But if you look at his last 3 years, slash lines in the minor leagues, they are terrible. I mean, I just talked about they were Chris Owings in 2018 level. I mean, he was just getting bombarded and overwhelmed by minor league pitching. So I guess I reject the notion that they are being slow with him. And I also understand the temptation, especially with that guy, to make sure that he is as mentally strong and ready, prepared, whatever the word is, for that challenge. It's going to come. Unless he hurts his finger again, getting out of bed or whatever that was a couple years ago, unless he has an oblique injury again or whatever, he's going to be in the big leagues this year. Like September, if not, that would be the absolute latest. I'm okay with them waiting a little bit just to let him overperform a little. Let him think AAA is easy. What are you guys waiting for? Like, I am ready for this. I've never been more ready. Like, once you get to that point, I think you have a better chance of success.
It was interesting. Oh, go ahead, Blair.
I was going to say he'll be in the major leagues with perhaps the Royals minor league player of the year, attached to his name, which will I think would do wonders for him, and that would I think help sell the idea of Bubba as a major league player.
That's a good point.
Just a side point, sort of related. I remember Dayton Moore, the general manager, saying that one of the things he wants going on here is that Bubba's not looking every day to say, when am I getting the call? When am I getting the call? He wants him just to be in the moment. But then Dayton kind of dropped in the line, and then he'll be called up when he least expects it, or something to that effect, which I just thought was an interesting way for him to put it. Makes me feel like they'll still aim for before September, but probably not right after the All-Star break.
I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, I think early August would, sort of be when you really start looking. But not, I wouldn't be shocked if it was next week, and I wouldn't be shocked if it was September 1st.
Let's cover one more Royals topic before we break, and that is Ned Yost. Sam, you mentioned it in your column.
Yeah.
It's on his way to a second straight 100-loss season, and he's on a 1-year deal this year. Is he the manager of the Royals going forward?
It's up to him for the most part, but I'll go ahead and say the thing that I've been saying for the last 2 or 3 off seasons, which is I think he'll retire. I keep being wrong about that, but there's a lot pointing that direction. And again, I want to be very upfront as I can be. Like, I've been wrong about this the last couple of years, but there is a tension. We've talked about this on the show. I've written about it in the paper, but there is a little bit of tension in the organization about his future and whether he is attacking his job right now the same way that he did from, was it 2010 that he took over for Trey, from 2010 to 2015. And look, a lot of that's natural, like in a competitive, business, like a Major League Baseball team. There's going to be people with differing opinions. There should be. If there's not, there's something wrong. But that tension has existed for at least a year, and maybe a little bit more. There are at least some people in the organization that would think, go enjoy your farm. It's paid off. You keep saying that, go enjoy life, and let's get somebody else, because it's in some ways, and I haven't heard anybody in the organization say this. This is me talking. I want to be clear about that. But it's as if Ned Yost is giving a short-term commitment year to year. He's giving a short-term commitment to a very long-term project, and I don't know how sustainable that is over the long term.
Sam, I was going to ask you about that very point. How much do you think that would change if that notion would change if he simply signed a longer-term contract? And am I right? I think you referred to this. Was the last time he was on a long-term contract 2015, and it's been year to year since then, or was he on year to year before that?
Well, I remember that he was. His contract ended after 2015, and I remember it because our then beat writer Andy McCullough referred to him as a lame duck manager in print, and Ned had a reaction to that. So he's gone year to year at least since 2015. I think there would be some. Look, you could always get out of a contract, so I get that, but and whenever he's done as the manager, he's still going to be an employee. They're just going to shift him. He'll be special consultant to the general manager. Like that's what it'll do. But that would change a little bit if he said, you know what, I want a 3-year deal because at this point in that organization, we should be at this marker, this marker, this marker, and this marker. And if we're not, then I need to go because I haven't been doing my job. But I also think that it's more specific than that. It's more how he carries himself and how he works. And there's a little bit of tension around that.
Part of that too, and I don't entirely understand why I don't feel differently about it, or why maybe more people don't feel differently about it. But you're about to have back-to-back 100-loss seasons. I don't feel like there's any real great clamor to say, well, you got to get rid of the manager. I don't feel like it's that way that much publicly. Maybe I'm not picking up, my antenna's not picking that up. But is it because there's such an understanding that they let the goods wither away that he's working with, or what? Or am I just wrong? Are people really starting to feel like you got to have a change?
I think there's some fans, right, that want him gone. There's some fans that have wanted him gone every day since 2011,
yeah.
including the wild card game.
Yeah,
well, especially after the fifth inning.
Yes, sixth inning. Yeah, the Giordano affair, and then Pedro Martinez off the top rope during that game too. But so there's been some of that for sure. But I think here's what I know. If you look up, and I did this for a column a couple weeks ago or something, if you look up the teams that have lost 100 games in back-to-back seasons, they changed something. The GM gets fired, the manager gets fired, something. And this would be, Dayton's not going anywhere. This would be 100 losses 2 years in a row, and it's the exact same leadership structure. I mean, that's pretty unheard of. Yeah. That doesn't happen. And, look, maybe the response to that is, well, Dayton should go too. And, maybe he should, but he's still, the GM in modern baseball is much more important than the manager. That has probably existed for a long time, but that the gap widens as we go on. And it's the same leadership structure, because if you fire Dayton, you're firing JJ, you're firing, Scott Sharp, you're firing all these people that had built the first time around. And it becomes a little bit easier with a 64-year-old manager, who has talked about retiring anyway for a long time. I don't think there's a big push publicly because he does have a World Series ring. But I think that if he announced he was retiring tomorrow, I think there'd be a lot of Royals fans who are like, yes, okay, that's time. It's time.
All right, quick podcast poll as we go into the break. Will Ned Yost be the manager in 2020? Vahe.
Yes.
Sam.
I'm sticking with no. Eventually I'll be right.
The yes carries it 2-1. I will believe it when I see it. Ned Yost, not the manager of the Royals. All right, guys, we'll be back right after this. Hey, it's Blair Kerkhoff, and if you're listening to this, you love Kansas City sports, whether it's the Chiefs, Royals, Sporting, Mizzou, KU, or K-State. And no one covers these teams like the Kansas City Star. If you currently subscribe to the paper or have a digital subscription, thank you for your support. And if you don't, here's a great offer. It's called Sports Pass, unlimited digital access to every sports story and video on kansascity.com. And it's just $30 for the first year. It's the best sports value in town, just 8 cents a day or $2.50 a month. You can't beat that. Subscribe now at kansascity.com/sportspass. Okay, we are back with Vahe Gregorian and Sam Mellinger, the Star sports columnists, and we spent part of the first part of the podcast talking about Salvador Perez, and Salvador Perez was part of a promo for World Cup 2026 that I saw. He had a separate one, and Patrick Mahomes and Matt Beasler also shared the stage on a World Cup 2026 promo. I thought was pretty interesting. And I bring that up because the Women's World Cup was completed on Sunday. The U.S. defeated the Netherlands 2-0, as we expected that they would. And the event caused a lot of excitement and news around the country, but nowhere was that excitement more visible than in Kansas City at the Power and Light District. And Vahe, you spent Sunday among the thousands in the living room and on the stairs and everywhere else I saw the humanity. I was there on was it Tuesday for the England semifinal game, so we both had an experience out there. What were your impressions just watching? I think that was that your first time at the Power and Light watching soccer?
I'd been over there before. I want to say it might have been Men's World Cup something. But
They've had men's World Cup watch parties there for sure.
But it wasn't like that. I mean, it was good, and maybe even with the Women's World Cup in 2015 too. I think they were showing there. But this just felt a little bit different. I mean, it really got so loud at one point. It's funny. I took a little video of the reaction after a goal, and in the foreground of the video, there's this little girl with her fingers in her ears, and it was that kind of loud. And the acoustics are kind of interesting because it seems to be an open roof, but it's not. It's covered, and I think that gives a little boom factor. And it was great. And really, it made you feel like, how can this phenomenon be this way here? I don't. You guys might be onto something similar, but I'm not. I don't know any other sort of center of energy watching this. Certainly not ones that Fox Sports was cutting away to. I think it happened 5, 6, 7 times yesterday. So I don't exactly understand where it began or why it's this way. I know there's soccer enthusiasm here, but it really was, I think you used the word the other day, Blair, spectacle, and it felt like that all the more so.
Soccer wasn't this way a decade ago in Kansas City. I think a combination of things. The brilliant marketing of Sporting KC.
Yes.
Brilliant marketing. And their ahead of the curve fan experience on, at Children's Mercy Park, being welcome and open to everybody, and to have the fan experience to be such that it was the first place that Wi-Fi wasn't a problem for a fan at a stadium, and that you think, well, really, that's what a ridiculous notion. At the time, a decade or so ago, that was major. You couldn't go to a sporting event in any stadium, baseball, football, basketball, hockey. You couldn't go to a stadium, college football or basketball, and people would leave the event because they couldn't talk on their cell phone. Sporting figured it out, cracked the code on that. And I know it's just a small thing, but I think that helped create a younger crowd at Sporting, and it helped create the Cauldron, which now we see this enthusiastic group of young fans behind the goal during games, and that built into something. And Sporting is sold out however many 100+ games in a row now. And the Power and Light District. Again, we go back to the Men's World Cup. I can't remember the year. It was the year that, was it the Belgian game or maybe one of the Ghana games? I forgot which year the World Cup was, but they had a watch party. They decided to have a watch party, and the Power and Light was only a few years old at the time, and people showed up, and it became a spectacle, and people were filming it, and it got on YouTube, and all of a sudden now Kansas City, which didn't support the Wizards at all when they were at Arrowhead Stadium, now has Sporting Kansas City in a beautiful new stadium that is fan-friendly and technology-friendly, and they have the Power and Light District showing crowds, big crowds, enthusiastic crowds, screaming USA, and that gets shared socially. I think those were the two big the drivers of what we think of today as Kansas City being a soccer town.
There's also a wave. All that's, I would underline every single syllable of what you just said. But they've also been riding a bit of a wave, just generally, like culturally, soccer everywhere, I think, is incrementally just being a bigger deal. You look at, the Premier League is so easy to find on TV Saturday and Sunday mornings.
Now it is.
Yes.
Yeah, in the last few years, I think it was brilliant strategy by NBC to show live games on Saturday morning.
Yep. And to your point, 10 years ago, that didn't exist. You could probably stream them, but it was crappy technology that you're trying to do it with. The other thing, and maybe this is just a tangent point, but you talked a lot about Sporting and their marketing. Sporting promoted these watch parties hard in a way that I don't know existed with other MLS clubs. I've heard that it did not. I'm not going to go poll every other MLS market, but Sporting was aggressive in pushing that as sort of, I don't know that they profited necessarily or directly from that, but it certainly helps soccer. Anything that's good for soccer in Kansas City is obviously good for Sporting, and Sporting has an interest as well in capturing the World Cup. And if that helps then that's a big thing too. So, I think that Sporting has been really smart. I mean, I keep saying, they've been smart in so many different ways. But to build that, because we live in like we do an old man segment real quick?
Yeah.
I wouldn't know what that is.
It's like a shareable society, right? Like if you can't share it, did it exist? And if you can share it, it was the only thing that mattered. And those 10-second clips or whatever it was on Fox of everybody going ballistic at Power and Light, and those pictures, Alex Morgan with 3-point-something million Twitter followers, sending that picture out. Stuff like that matters. It just does, especially at this point when Kansas City, and we got a lot going against us, public transportation and a lot of other things. But as Kansas City's trying to get a World Cup, I don't think it can't lead your presentation in why you should get the 2026 World Cup, but it's part of it.
I think you just hit on it. Why it matters that Kansas City looks great on TV, and why the TV ratings were as high as they were for the Kansas City market. That's another visual, right? That's part of the resume that Kansas City will send to FIFA as it bids for the 2026 World Cup. But yeah, look, at another time in history, Kansas City as a candidate for a World Cup would be a laughable,
right.
a laughable, idea. But today, a day after the Women's World Cup, when Kansas City was the number 3 market overall for the entirety of the World Cup in terms of Nielsen television ratings, I'd be disappointed now if Kansas City didn't get a piece of the World Cup in 2026.
So there is, what I just said, I mean, and I think it's true that there are, public transportation, apparently that is pretty high up on the FIFA priorities.
Is it public transportation per se, or the ability to create a network? I mean, is it?
That's it. Getting people from distance to the stadium.
Yeah.
And Kansas City doesn't have a downtown stadium, and won't for 2026.
But in other words, the distinction being not necessarily relying on the public transportation as we have it, but what they can offer to create that accommodates this.
A new bus system to get people to and from.
They will have, if there are games, there will be buses going straight from downtown to Arrowhead.
I bet
straight
lanes will be closed.
Plaza, yes, like all that will exist, but it's not the same. It's not the same thing as having a train,
right?
That goes down and back. It's just not. And look, this is what I've been told, is very important to FIFA. The airport, I think, helps, but I think what they want is, a place that can absorb thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people from out of town to come in. And that's hotel rooms, public transportation's a big deal, and just I think a size of a city to have enough restaurants, to have enough stuff to do, just for that many people, I think is important. But I also think Kansas City, we have a lot going for us. It was pretty recently that there was a talk of do we really need all of these hotels in Kansas City, right? So we're gonna have some rooms. I think geographically it makes a lot of sense, especially if, this is degrees of separation, but there's a thought that Denver faces, no pun intended, but an uphill climb because of their elevation, because Monterey and Mexico City has a high elevation.
That's right, and both of those cities are guaranteed games.
And so if you're going to have that, do you really want another super high elevation city? So if Denver's out, then Kansas City's potentially the only spot, I hope I'm not forgetting somebody, but the only spot between Cincinnati would be, maybe the closest, and the West Coast.
Or Nashville, whatever.
Nashville,
between
right.
those two.
LA, San Francisco, Seattle. You're just going to ignore. And look, there's a lot of people listening to this right now. They're like, we get ignored all the time in this part of the country. So what would be new? But I think that's a real consideration as well.
This is related, but a little tangentially. How much do you think, whatever their awareness raising campaign, the notion of getting 150,000 petitions, signatures, and donations and volunteer stuff, how much is that a real factor to demonstrate anything to FIFA, and how much is it just, for lack of a better term, to try to make us all feel good that they're doing something? I mean, how can these things matter?
I haven't heard of another city doing something like that, and that doesn't mean it's not happening. I just haven't heard of another city, bring the World Cup to our city petition. I think if you're Kansas City and you're I think this is right, the smallest metropolitan area bidding that's left among the U.S. cities that are bidding. We're just a little bit below Cincinnati in terms of metro size. Nashville's a little bit bigger than Kansas City as well. then I think maybe we tend to take it a little more personally here. The Kansas City candidacy for this. We know that New York and L.A. and Dallas, Houston, probably Atlanta, there's just some slam dunks. And then there are the next group of cities that if they don't get awarded a World Cup, they kind of won't bat an eye. It's just, we wanted it, we didn't get it. I think we're to the point now, especially on the day after the great scene at the Power and Light District and the way it's foremost in people's minds, soccer, that if Kansas City somehow doesn't get the games in 2026, there'll be some hurt here.
It would feel personal.
Yep.
And I mean, there are people listening to this who have T-shirts in their drawers that say Kansas City Soccer Capital of the United States. That would be a hard shirt to wear.
God bless them
yeah, for that would become a very difficult shirt to wear. It's sort of like if you lack in, sort of the obvious, like, if you have people over and your food isn't that good or whatever, you're going to make up for it in hospitality. You're going to be super nice. You're going to clean the house. You're gonna get the best dessert, like whatever. Like if we don't have like a great rail system and we don't have a beach and we don't have like that stuff, we're gonna make up for it with 150,000 signatures and a really cool clip that Fox can show, during the World Cup.
Yep.
Find your edge, man.
It's interesting
it's
because it would only be one of 16 total and 10 in the United States that if
That's
it gets
right.
it.
There are right.
So it's not the epicenter of the World Cup. On the other hand, I think it's accurate to say it would be the biggest event ever in the city.
Oh, no doubt.
Yes.
Sporting event, certainly.
Yeah, no doubt.
And,
I mean, it
by a bunch.
Yeah,
by a bunch.
Right now it's the World Series and 2 World Series and an AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
And also a couple of baseball All-Star games.
And
stuff that only could approximate a global
We've
scale.
we've had 3 political conventions.
76
since
Republican?
and the last one was in 76.
Last one was 76.
Yeah. You're talking about a month-long, basically, if it's a pool play site and not a semifinal site, a month-long, which I assume it would be for a market size like this. Kansas City wouldn't get a semifinal, right? It would get a pool, and then you're talking about a month, 4 teams, 4 nations here, spending 3 weeks, bringing in, incredible amount of fans. And we both talked to David Ficklin, who's the executive director of the Kansas City World Cup bid, they put the number at $620 million economic impact. There's nothing. I mean, that's 10 Big 12 it's 20 Big 12 tournaments.
Yeah.
The
other part of this too is like a lot of those economic studies, they don't talk about like displacement spending, because a Big 12 tournament, a lot of people that go to that are from Kansas City or they're from Overland Park or Liberty or Blue Springs or Shawnee or whatever. They're going to spend that money somewhere. The World Cup, I mean, that's the definition of people from other places coming here to spend their money. And, so I think we talked about this a show or two earlier. Like, that's the one economic impact study that I won't just blindly make fun of. Because I think that one there might be some actual teeth in it. You can also think about it in terms of just like TV viewers. It's imperfect, but it's a thing. And certainly like people watching, Kansas City, that looks cool or whatever. I mean that has some impact, but I mean the number of people that watched any World Series game, whatever I assume it was Game 7 in 2014 that would be the most watched, whatever, is dwarfed by the worst World Cup TV rating, in the history of World Cup. Like, it's just
as a worldview event.
Yes,
as
the number of eyeballs watching a thing that happens in Kansas City, it would probably be at least 5 times bigger than anything else we've ever had.
No,
that's probably conservative.
We'll see. The decision's not going to be made until either the second half of 2020 or maybe even to early 2021. So there's
I
miles
can't remember,
to
Blair.
go.
Are they reducing the field a little
No,
bit or all at once?
I think it's the next
No
announcement.
roses given
Painful.
out.
Hey, I feel this is. I don't know why I feel the need to tell you this, but 1976 Republican Convention. There's a little trivia attached to that. It was the first time John Dorsey ever came to Kansas City from his Maryland abode because he was a page in the Republican Convention. I've held that for 5 years because John wouldn't let me. John wouldn't let me write it.
Opportunity.
And now
unleash.
that's a news peg. Sorry, John, but that statute of limitations is up on that one.
You remember the ticket that came out of that convention?
Ford
And Bob Dole.
and Bob Dole.
Yep. And the convention in Kemper Arena, last one that Kansas City's had.
Is
So,
that right? It was in Kemper,
Kemper Arena? Yep.
the brand new Kemper.
Yeah, just a couple
4
years
years,
old.
yeah.
Right, home of the Kings, and I think the Scouts were gone by then. They had their 2-year run.
Had their introductory press conference. So they were out.
Gone. All right, guys, great stuff. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll talk to you again soon. Links to the stories we discussed can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com, the True Blue app, and facebook.com/True Blue. Many thanks to our producers today, Kathy Liu and Leah Becerra. This has been Sports Beat KC, a sports podcast presented by the Kansas City Star, and we'll be back soon to talk sports in Kansas City.